welcome to the EdTechTacToe podcast, episode number 1. I'm so excited for you to be here. I will say, though, that the description of the podcast and what I'm getting into today is going to be relevant, but not as relevant as what I hope it will look like when this podcast keeps going. Today is honestly a little bit of a special episode. And the reason why has to do with numbers. So roughly, there's 335 million people in the United States. And according to EdWeek, this is a 2017 number. So I'm going to assume it's probably more at this point because I kind of remember at ISTE or at some conference, and I heard a bigger version of this number. But according to EdWeek in 2017, 150 million students use Google Classroom and or G Suite, which is like your Google for Education platform. I remember seeing like 88%, but let's just go with the 150. I mean, it's almost half of the people in the country are using Google for their school. Now, I have a coworker specifically that loves using My Maps for his history class. So basically, he teaches the students with IEPs, and it's a really great way to engage them visually, right? Like, think about it. In history class, you learn about all these places, but we know that kids and maps are not necessarily like the best of friends. And so I love that he incorporates these My Maps where kids will look for pictures and they'll take notes on a map. Oh, excuse me, today. Well, first episode, I'm already coughing up a storm. They'll link YouTube videos. And I don't know how he's so cool as a cucumber, because I can imagine somebody who's spent the last whatever amount of years Google has been around in this way. And he's built such a repertoire of ideas that use these tools like YouTube and My Maps. And, I'm an earth science teacher. Like, I'm a big Google Earth guy. And just imagine, though, that it just disappears overnight. Well, what's even crazier is imagine you didn't even know it was happening. And to add to that, I can't even tell you how many people I talk to that I teach with or am just friendly with that are teachers also in New York State. And we're about a week away from that actually happening. And it's scary to me that nobody knows. And so that's why this is my first episode. Is it will be a little bit more centered around New York State, but there's a big discussion that is going to be put in here that will apply to anybody in any state. So just, keep that context that although in about a week, this is what you're going to hear from teachers in New York State, it's very likely going to enter maybe into your state's educational landscape. So not to go too far into who I am at the moment, and I'll hopefully, I'll be able to share more and more as time goes on, but I know you want to kind of hear what's going on and less about who I am. But my name is Scott Azar. I have been a science teacher since 2009. I am a district technology mentor. I'm a New York State master teacher. I am a doctoral candidate at the moment, hopefully finishing up my study pretty soon on artificial intelligence and education. I grew up, my mom has been a teacher for about like 55 years. I've been around education my whole life in a very different, or in probably a very relatable way to many of you. And I'm a nerd, and I love technology. I love educational technology. I love what technology can bring to our classrooms. And I also love what good teaching could be. But I've also felt that in time, a lot of times what veterans might see as kind of crazy and stuff, well, sometimes, it is just being stuck in the ways. But a lot of times, 20 years later, so there's been a reading program in New York State that New York City specifically just threw out, and many other teachers used it. And it just got thrown out because they realized it didn't actually work. And my mother, as an elementary school teacher, was like, I remember when that thing came out like 20, 30 years ago. I don't remember when it was. And I knew immediately that this wasn't going to work. And so now fast forward, she's like, told you so. And so this podcast is also going to explore the winning and losing connections, tic-tac-toe or tech-tac-toe, between educational technology and then good teaching as a whole, and sometimes together, sometimes apart. I want to make sure we can challenge ideas, reaffirm ideas, look at what research says. So we're not just saying, oh, this is the new buzzword. We have to use learning, your dominant learning style. And, that's something that's still really prevalent, but there's a lot of research about how that really isn't a thing as much as we thought. And I have this is getting way down the line. So we're going to explore. My purpose is I want to make sure that we are really looking, for myself and for all of you who are listening, what are the real ways that we can make an impact with students, whether they fly in the face of prevalent trends. Maybe they're research-based and they just get butchered like some things do because we just pick and choose what we understand and we just run with it, and we kind of take these things out of context and blow them up because they sound great. But realistically, a lot of times you kind of get a feeling what works and what doesn't. And so that's what we're going to focus on in this podcast. But today, we are going to look at how Google and New York State are fighting over a slice of pie. Not Apple and not Cherry, but personally identifiable information. And let's just get right into it. So my big question really for today is, how are we able to use technology in a way that also protects student data? Because that's what this slice of pie is. It's that personally identifiable information that companies are trying to, and in this case, Google, to get so they can target ads for children or maybe take their data. And obviously I don't even like my data being in half of these places. I know it just happens, and that's sort of unfortunately part of the game. But I always have to have conversations with kids like, don't use that VPN. If you're not paying for it, you think they're just giving you this thing because they love you? No, they're taking your stuff and, all your data, everything you do goes through that, and then just take it. And so this is a really big discussion that I think we can spend a ton of time on, but I want to really just focus on what Google and New York State are kind of in this battle with, but also circle back to this on a later podcast. So I guess that's a good idea. If you're watching, I just enabled reactions and I thought they were disabled. So I want to start with this. Listen, after this episode, if you're an administrator or even a teacher, you need to make sure you're communicating right away. There is not a lot of time left. We have a week. Probably since this is my first episode, not many people are going to even be, watching or listening right away. I hope you guys share this for anyone who does listen, but there needs to be better communication, because it's really unfortunate how many people don't know that in 1 week, Google is going to be changing a lot about how teachers and students, mostly students, interact with their platform and what different programs are going to be available to them. So this all stems from Ed Law 2D. So whether you're in New York or not, it's basically New York's version to try to protect the student privacy and security. And so basically it requires that schools and potentially school districts, however, whatever the organization is, has parental consent in some circumstances for using certain types of data, but mostly it's about limiting and basically monitoring how companies are using data for students, making sure that they are not providing anybody else third-party access to data, selling any information. It's basically just like a lot of legalese that just says, hey, don't sell student information. Don't use it when you are inputting my stuff into your new AI feature. Make sure you remove the name so that none of that information gets out to anybody else. And it just keeps kids safe and keeps their identity safe. And so it's so part 121, which is this Ed Law 2D specific portion, where this should have been implemented in New York a lot. But basically, if you want to use a platform, you have to fill out these, it's going to look different, but basically you're going to fill out some kind of a form that says, what is this software? How are they collecting information? You're going to do your due diligence. Somebody's going to get that, an administrator or your data protection officer, and they're going to send that out. And this company is basically going to agree to it. And so this is a bigger extension of FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And again, it's all circling back to how we're protecting student data. And so what is currently happening is Google won't sign those Ed Law 2D agreements. And so New York State and Google are just kind of in this ridiculous fight where, honestly, I'll get into it a little bit more in a little bit, but it's kind of, I feel like this is a bad play for Google. on many levels. You know, like I kind of mentioned before, they're so well ingrained into all of this. So for them, this is, now I'm not in the background of this argument, but like some of these things just seem a little nuts and they should just sign the agreements. So easier said than done, right? So let's just kind of get into this. So what exactly is happening? So there are a bunch of different services that are going to be shut down. The core services, and I'm going to list those. I'm going to in the comments below, or in the show notes, I should say. Depending on what level of Google for Education you have, there's the fundamental, standard, and plus. There are going to be different things that are going to be shut off for you. So here is a quick list of the core features that will be fine starting March 1st of 2025. App Sheets, which I don't know how many people actually use in a classroom. Google Classroom is okay. Cloud Identity Services. Google Gemini. The Google Gemini Education is 18 plus, and so those shouldn't be used anyway, but there is a 13 plus version that Google finally got out for students. And again, later episode we'll go into this a little bit more, but that should be available to standard and plus. And then your Gmail, calendars, chat, contacts, docs, drive, forms, Google Keep, which I love, Google Meet, Sheets, Slides, Sites, Tasks, Google Vids, which is only for plus, is really cool. Also, Chrome Sync, which I want to come back to that later. So Chrome Sync is that thing when you go on one computer and then you go to another one, all your stuff shows up. And just keep that in the back of your mind for a few minutes. Your Workspace and Read Along. So those are your core features. Now let's go to your features that will be affected by this ban. The first two are Google Earth and Google Maps. Now, I have hated the fact that in an inner science class, I have no Google Earth where students can look at the world. I could do it as a teacher, but kids couldn't do that. And I always felt that that was such a barrier, and it was such a disservice to kids. And so you can kind of use Google Maps and kids can drop the little peg person, but that's going to. Now, what will be there is teacher access. So teachers, you are fine. You are an adult. And I guess your information's okay to share. I don't really, again, know the back end of this, but if you do know, drop that in the comments so we can learn a little bit more. But teachers will be okay. Students are going to not be able to use these services anymore. They're going to be completely disabled. One thing I do want to note, though, is it's a little unclear in the document, and I'll be sharing a website in the show notes as well, whether that means the school needs to shut them down or if it's getting shut down at Google. A lot of the wording in this document where I'm getting my information from that was provided to us is a little ambiguous. And so we will see. And I'll explain little places where I think that this is becoming a little ambiguous. And if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, I'll be sharing my screen with you so you can see that resource hub that I'm talking about. So teachers, you are going to be able to use YouTube. We are going to be able to use Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Translate, Notebook LM, Google Books rather, Chrome extensions, bookmarks, all that stuff. Students are going to be affected by these things. So Google Maps and Google Earth, we're good to make all that stuff. However, students are not going to be able to interact with that, which is actually really, let's see if it will, does it do a thumbs down? It does a thumbs down. Cool. That's the first thing to note, is that these are going to really just affect student usage, but teachers, you're going to be able to do that. I'm going to leave YouTube for the end because this is the bigger one. Google Translate. Google Translate is also going away. Again, everything for a teacher is unaffected. So just assume that as a teacher, you're going to have your normal, nothing's going to change for you. This is only for students. They are going to be able to use Google Translate. So students will not be able to go to the Google Translate website. However, they will be able to use Google Translate in Google Docs. What's unclear is when this is all disabled, if they'll be able to, for example, go to a web page and translate a web page, or to right click on the page and translate something. There are other they're basically widgets. And so the widget versions apparently should work, but it was a little unclear where it will work. For example, you can't go to Google Translate, but in Google search, a student could use Google search. That's going to be there. But if you want to search a translation, that will work. So that's what's really weird about a lot of these things. There's little workarounds that are a nice little compromise at least, but there are a lot of questions that I don't think people will necessarily be able to answer until it happens. So if you typically have students use that website, you have a little bit of time. Think about how you might change the way that gets done. Maybe you have to do it this time, or just, think of that next step just in case. I don't use Google Books, but you'll be able to use some stuff if teachers make it and send it out. Again, it's unclear how that's going to get affected to students, who's actually blocking it, because according to the resource hub, teachers are going to be able to use it, but then student access is limited, and that was very unclear to me. Also, I will backtrack for a quick second. Teachers, although everything is going to be available to you, this does go back to this privacy thing. You shouldn't be putting the names of students in anything, whether it be AI, so like ChatGPT, any of these things, Gemini, even just these websites that use those tools to do that. Use fake names. I give students numbers that they won't find anything else. I just did it. So I alphabetize them with a number, and it just helps me. Like when I have physical papers, instead of trying to do the whole alphabet thing, I just do it in number order. Or if I make somebody else do it, it's just easier in number order. And so if I have students log into something that I'm unsure of, I just have them use those instead of their names. And then it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that they're on these websites. But again, making sure they're approved in your state for the privacy concerns is a big concern. Google Chrome extensions will work, but again, those are going to be a case-by-case basis. Well, they'll be allowed by your school, but the school has to do its due diligence to make sure that they're not collecting those privacy materials. This is the weird one now. Google bookmarks or Chrome bookmarks. So a student can get bookmarks pushed to their computer by the admin console. A student can also pin bookmarks to the top of their Chrome. However, if a student were to go to their other computer at home and they were to go and look for that bookmark, it will not be there. And that to me is a weird one, because Chrome Sync is going to be enabled. So that is a core feature that shares, and is apparently all the core things are EdLaw 2D approved. Those all protect student privacy. So all of that in those core features, those are safe, but the bookmarks are not safe. That a student is going to have to move and do on each individual one. And maybe someone can explain why that is. To me, that makes no sense. If the Chrome Sync is the thing that also moves the bookmarks around, then why aren't kids allowed to sync their bookmarks? To me, that just seems like almost like a little bit of a tit for tat type of a thing is the nicest way to say that. So those are the biggest things, except for YouTube. So this is going to be the hard one. Students will no longer be able to access YouTube directly. They will not be able to go on to youtube.com and use any kind of YouTube link at all. However, teachers, you will be able to access that. Even if your school, so like in my school, we block YouTube in school for students, plus we block it up to a certain time. And basically, if they're home on their own network, they can use it. This cuts it all off. However, this could provide an opportunity, because if it's blocked for everybody, with the exception of if a teacher embeds the video in a platform like Google Classroom or Slides, that will play for students, because basically it's not asking them to log in or anything like that. And the student would be logged into maybe Google Slides, but it's not logging into YouTube. Now, the big question is Edpuzzle, Nearpod, Formative, a platform that I'm a big fan of, and these other quizzes, all these platforms that take those videos and do stuff with them, and then many more. So like Kirapod, you get it. But these websites that basically embed those videos, are they going to be allowed? The answer is better check. So on the Google Resource Hub, it is unclear. It says it should work, but you should test it out. And I'll show you that in 2 seconds. But This could be an opportunity though, because if your school blocks YouTube, maybe they're going to unblock it. Maybe that's something worth advocating for, because now they don't have to worry about kids going off on random websites to random YouTube videos and not watching the stuff that you want them to watch. They'll have to watch what you do, as long as it's embedded in Google Classroom or Slides or one of those other platforms. Like, it'd be nice to use an Edpuzzle or a Formative with videos in class as like a student pace type of a thing. So this is where things get a little interesting. So I'm going to change and share my screen. This is the frequently asked question section of a New York State site that has a lot of information here, and I'll leave the link in the show notes. And so here's where I was getting a lot. So if you want something more specific, this would be the place that you want to check out. But I want to go down to YouTube. So right here, there are many workarounds that are floating out for how to allow students to access YouTube. Are there any approved by Google? Workarounds inevitably provide broader concerns, and Google does not recommend their use. For example, Google does not recommend blocking YouTube cookies in order to allow a user to access YouTube in a signed out state. This exposes comments on videos which may not be appropriate for education. So there is a way, if you've never learned how to do that, check out Azar Sciences, which is my YouTube channel, where I have a bunch of just the tech tips. So unlike the 23 minutes I've been talking at you, you can get quick couple of minute videos. I have some longer tutorials and more is growing, but how you could actually do that. Now, if a student got access to a YouTube video link and then put the no cookies, would it work? I have no idea. Sounds like it will according to this, but it also doesn't make sense, because then, like, let's say you're on a Chromebook, that student is on their Chromebook, they're signed into all of the YouTube, the G Suite stuff and that Chromebook. And so if they try to do that, I have no idea if it works. So that's going to be something where maybe we don't just say, okay, cool, first day, let's unblock YouTube and, only allow embedded videos, but this is going to be an interesting one. So Google has advised districts do not use workarounds for performing searches for video contents if they're not logged in. Again, it's unclear who's actually doing the blocking. It's unclear if Google's doing the blocking or if the expectation is that by New York State that the school districts are blocking them. Some districts have already done it. And actually, if you are a district in New York State and you're catching this, maybe let us know how this is working. Now, I don't know if any of that actually changes once that deadline comes up. If the way things are blocked will change. Again, if you go through this, it's a little unclear. Like, nothing really speaks to how the block is occurring. So yeah, there's a lot of questions to still be answered, but definitely check this document out because there's a lot of really, really useful information here. Here's that bookmarks thing. Disabling does not prevent the technology leaders from pushing managed bookmarks. The web store, Google Books, Google Groups, things like that are going to be posted on there. So let's just summarize this and get you on your way for the day. So first, make sure you're understanding your EdLaw 2Ds. That's good teaching practices, whether it's EdLaw 2D or some other privacy for your state. Two, don't ever share student information for somebody who could be using that nefariously or to make money on student data. And if you're unsure, it's simple. Just ask. If you have a technology person, which I think every school pretty much has some version of a technology person, send it and ask questions. Better be safe than sorry. God forbid, like, you are the person that there's a issue and it all gets traced back to you, right? Like, just do the right thing. I would try to find, if you're about to use this next week and you're going to use YouTube and stuff, maybe get ahead of it and start embedding those videos on a Google slide. Even if you do something differently, maybe embed it on a Google slide and then have the students answer questions on subsequent slides just until we find out if it works or not. Somebody recommended certain Google accounts you could actually download the videos temporarily. So maybe you do that in a legal way, right? We're not trying to do more illegal things to get around that, but just kind of try to figure out how you can circumvent within what information, with the information that we're given, like what you could do to kind of, work within the confines at the moment till we understand what this really looks like. And yeah, I mean, that's really going to be the bulk of today. Just, get ready to have that plan B, which if you've been teaching for a while at this point, if you've changed all your methods to technology from maybe like paper and pen or whatever, you kind of already know what your plan B is. But think about it. If this doesn't work, What can you do differently? Just be prepared for that just in case. So again, the winning and losing connections. The losing connections there's a really big lack of transparency here, right? We need to be transparent with what to expect so we know how to best help kids. If you're an administrator or a teacher, maybe you should let parents know what's going on, that they won't be able to access these things on their school computers anymore with their school accounts if they take them home, or if they just don't have their own. Maybe a parent is okay now with setting up a personal Gmail for using that at home. Again, that wouldn't be up to you, but making sure that they know that, hey, these are going to be the things that are going to get blocked. So this is not a surprise like, oh, it always works after this time, and all of a sudden it doesn't. 2, bad connection is if you're just finding out about this right now and there's only 5 days left in the month, not good. Hopefully you have enough time to kind of scramble and get that together. What is good is we're protecting kids' data. Hopefully you're thinking about how maybe you can use ID numbers or something like that if you're unsure about a website, to make sure that you know who the kids are and it's protecting their identity, but also allowing you to have that access to like who might be doing something of poor taste in your classroom. And then finally, it's always good to have a backup plan, because the internet goes down, Chromebooks are dead, and your computer crashes, the smartboard doesn't work, there's a fire drill, and now you only have 20 minutes to do a 40-minute lesson, right? There are always things that pop up. So always have a backup plan. And with that, I'm going to cut it before it hits a half hour. Thank you for stopping in. If you found this valuable, please rate the episode, post in the comments anything that you would like to hear in future episodes, and check out Azar Sciences for plenty of videos. Thank you so much, and enjoy your day.